Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football, continuing with our 2022 season previews as we take a look at the Oregon Ducks. A lot of optimism around the program. I love the hire of Dan Lanning. I think he's a young, energetic coach who's going to get the job done on the recruiting trail and potentially be in a good spot to lead them to maybe a conference change in the next few years. Before we get to it, I just want to say thank you guys for all the support you guys have shown the channel. Again, it's been such a blast talking with you guys in the comment section about your team. So if you guys do like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, let us know some players we're missing out on or players that should be on our radar in the comment section, because we're doing this to learn about these teams heading into 2022. And you guys are the experts. We're just giving you our takes. So let's start talking some Oregon football. Start on the offensive side of the ball. You got a new quarterback coming in potentially. What are your kind of takes on the offense here early on?
I mean, yeah, this is one of those really interesting quarterback battles, I think, that are being waged over the course of the spring and summer.
Yeah.
I mean, the issue I think everyone has with Bo Nix is he plays a game that defensive coordinators probably want to throw up when they watch, especially when they become head coaches a la Dan Lanning, because he turns the ball over. He makes way too many mistakes. And I just can't imagine, like, that's okay when your Gus Mills on and you want to score points and play a creative offense, but it's not okay when you're probably going to have the Dan Lanning, Kirby Smart philosophy that is play really good defense, be more physical than every team you play, and win that way. So
not turn the ball over.
I don't know how Bo Nix is going to fit with Dan Lanning. And the problem is for Bo Nix is he's got a good player backing him up and on the other side of that battle, and Ty Thompson, who's got a lot of talent, can run the ball and maybe be a guy Dan Lanning wants. I don't know.
Yeah, there's two stories of it. One, I think Bo Nix might be the better quarterback. He's a very proven veteran at the SEC level. And two, his offensive line for Auburn when he played there was just absolute. It was really bad. And he's going to have probably the best offense line he's ever played behind coming into Oregon.
A good old unit.
Yeah, and maybe that can clean up some of the mistakes. Another way you can look at this is if Ty Thompson doesn't play much this year, are we going to see him in the portal? Like, he didn't play with Anthony Brown, who, quite frankly, from Oregon fans, I think you'll agree, he was decent, but when the big games came, he just could not get it done down the field. You really could never get it done down the field, but it really was highlighted when you're playing a team like Utah, who you're not going to be able to run the football on. And Anthony Brown just could not make it happen last year. And so whoever wins this battle, Bo Nix or Ty Thompson, I think you're going to be better off at the quarterback position. I personally want to see Bo Nix as QB1 because he is very fun to watch, even though he turns the ball over. So let's talk a little bit about these wide receivers. You're talking a little pre-show. You like the build of this wide receiver room. What guys you think are stepping up this year for the Ducks?
I mean, you do have some fast, athletic wideouts. I think that's headlined by Chris Hudson and Seven McGee. Those are ultra dynamic playmakers who you want the ball in their hands consistently. And then you got some bigger, but still, I think athletic, talented wideouts. They didn't get a ton of action last year just because there were a lot of pros and high level older players on the team last year. But yeah, like a Troy Franklin and a Dante Thompson, Thornton, I should say. Both like guys in the flashes you saw, I think you kind of like what they can do.
My take on this wide receiver room is they do lose some guys. Like what? They lose Devin Williams. They lose Johnny Johnson. Micah Pittman goes to Florida State. I think this group of wide receivers have a little bit more juice to them. Like, I think Johnny Johnson, really tough guy who, I mean, was a great guy for Oregon. Jaden Reed could probably be in that too. Jalen Redd. Like, those guys were good, but I think this group can be really, really explosive. I'm going to start with Seven McGee, a former Rochester kid, so he's a ROC boy. We love that.
Shout out.
But he's a guy that came in as just a freak athlete to Oregon. They didn't really know what they wanted to do with him. They wanted to put him at running back, but they seem to find his niche. And if you watch that spring game, he looks to be a stud wide receiver. Really excited to see him. And then another guy that didn't mention that I think could play a role in this offense is Chase Cota. A guy that I think Oregon might be missing out on, and he could fill in that role of I'm going to get open underneath. I'm going to be consistent for this team and catch some passes from that.
I mean, because, you're in one sense, you're not bringing back a whole lot of production. Like, you look at the numbers from the guys who are coming back. Like, yeah, Chris Hudson played a fair amount, got a lot of work, made some big plays, but you're not bringing back a ton of, like, yardage, frankly. And with Chase Cody, you do have a guy who's got experience, who catches a lot of footballs at UCLA. And again, I think this whole unit could just get amped up a little bit by better quarterback play.
Yes.
Who can take more shots down the field and utilize some great athletes that obviously Oregon has. And you can see that by how they've recruited that position and by how the guys played last year. So.
Yeah, that was the most frustrating thing about last year is like they had the athletes on the outside. Anthony Brown just, quite frankly, couldn't get the ball to him. The running back position, you lose guys like C.J. Verdell, Travis Dye obviously going to USC. I don't think they're going to be horrible here. I mean, a guy like Byron Cardwell, it was a dude who averaged 6.5 yards, 6.8 yards per carry last year. Sean Dollars showed that he can have some juice. I think this group will be solid. I don't know if they're gonna be as good as they were last year, but I don't think it's gonna take a step back. And what really is gonna help is having that offensive line that is a veteran group. Most of this could have gone to the NFL last year, but they decided to come back. What was more impressive, come back to a coach they've never met before, and Coach Lanning. Dill, you watched a little of their offensive line. What are the guys that really jumping out to you here?
Yeah, so this I mean, when you look, I don't think you have a ton of pro talent, just to be like not like high level, no school type guys, but you have like depth NFL playing. So it's not. I don't think this is a unit that's marked by like your top guys. It's just a unit that's played very consistently for like 3 years. It seems like, and yeah, just guys who know each other. Really, just a solid unit, not like an all-time dominant unit, but a unit that's going to be really good for them and allow the playmakers, hopefully on the edge, to kind of get after it, where I think you're strongest.
And I 100% would take an offensive line that I don't have a single question mark about a single starting 5 offensive linemen on that team. I think they're all very solid. That no one glared out to me last year. I'd take that over having like a stud Peter Skronsky at Northwestern left tackle and then having question marks at the whole right side of the line. And so I think that is what you're really optimistic about this. And I think the run game will help with this good offensive line as well. Still, the defense, they lose a lot of production, but you're getting one of the best defensive coordinators in the game.
You are good at the front 7 too. And if you watch Dan Lanning and how he wants to play defense, he uses that front 7 to beat teams in the submission. So it's kind of like, where you're really getting gutted is the secondary. But you got a guy in Dan Lanning coming in who I think can turn this front 7 loose and really let them go to work because you have talent.
If I see the double A gaps that you saw in the Kobe Dean, Channington, and Quay Walker go on, the double A gap linebacker blitz with Justin Flowe and Noah Sewell, this defense is going to be really fun to watch. At times, this defense last year was so concerned with kind of playing this bend but don't break. We're going to play really, really off-zone coverage, and we'll let you have the short underneath yards, but we're going to try to stop you in the red zone. But it's not a great fit. Dan Lanning's not going to fly with that. He's going to be one of the only Pac-12 teams that I'm going to try to jump down your throat and get really aggressive with defense.
Dan Lanning is coming in like I feel like Brent Venables is coming into the Big 12. Like they're just coming into new environments that don't play the way they play. I mean, Georgia in some of those elite SEC defenses, they try to not give you a yard all game. There's just no one, even the good Washington Huskies defenses or good Utah defenses, like they're not no one's like aggressive like what Dan Lanning and Georgia were doing last year. So it's kind of interesting if they can like really just throw off everybody by just playing a defense that nobody's seen, and they have the talent to do it. They have the big physical linebackers in a good defensive line in my mind. If you look, I mean, number 50, Popo Amave was a tank last year. I thought he was really good. And they're bringing in Sam Taimani. So you have, I think, 2 really tough defensive tackles. And, even you're looking okay at the rush spot, even without Kayvon Thibodeau, I think.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the bigger questions from the front 7 is I love the idea that what you just said, Popo and Sam Taimani from Washington, they're going to keep those linebackers clean. And Noah Sewell is one of the better blitzing linebackers in the country. Brandon Dorlus, I think, can step up. Braden Swinson, I think, can step up. And then DJ Johnson, who I believe this is going to be his first year playing full-time defense. He was a guy that flashed in the spring game.
He was rocking in the spring game.
So they got guys who can step up. One of them needs to kind of take that dominant edge role.
Be the 10-sack guy. I mean, in my opinion, I think Braden Swinson's like the guy who can. I think he's looks to me like as pro as anyone on that rush group. So I think he can have a really big season. And yeah, you're right. Someone's got to replace Kayvon because Kayvon was an absolute terror for other teams last year.
Okay, the secondary, this is probably where you have the biggest question mark. So you're losing what? Guys like Vernon McKinley, Mikael Wright. There's one other, DJ James goes in the transfer portal. So the secondary, you have some question marks. You bring in Christian Gonzalez, who is a really, really good quarterback. That was a great get from Colorado. That's going to help the team out a lot. Outside of that, there aren't a ton of guys that you feel really, really comfortable with. I think the story of this is Dan Lanning is going to take some pressure off that secondary. If you remember last year, Kirby Smart was making a lot of noise about not being very confident in the secondary last year.
It didn't matter.
Front seven gets after it. If Dan Lanning can bring that kind of mentality, I think this defense will be okay, especially in a Pac-12 that outside of USC's offense, I don't know which offenses are really, really going to challenge you vertically downfield.
Yeah, and again, it's like Oregon's done as whatever you say what you want about Mario Cristobal coaching and developing talent, which maybe that's not been his game at his typical stops because he's never lit it up as a coordinator or anything. But the guy can recruit. So that Oregon team, and yeah, they lose a little bit of talent in the transition, but they did okay in the portal, and they have deep talent where I think you're not like worried that you have nobody to play the secondary position. You just need the guys who recruited and came in to fill those spots to step up.
Yeah, so taking a look at their schedule, obviously very, very tough. Going and playing Georgia and Mercedes-Benz Stadium week 1. I believe they're 18.5-point underdogs. Georgia has some question marks. They're losing a ton of talent on both sides of the ball, but this Georgia team has done a phenomenal job recruiting. That's going to be tough to go pretty much on the road, cross-country, and win that game. But after this, I don't know if there's a single team that I'm really picking Oregon not to be better than. Eastern Washington. You get BYU at home. I think that is a very, very winnable game. Washington State, Stanford, Arizona, off, UCLA, Cal, Colorado, Washington, Utah at home, and Oregon State. So the two things that are jumping out at the Pac-12 schedule is you get Utah and you get BYU, probably your two biggest outside of Georgia games at home, and then you're not playing USC. So there's not many teams that I'm really, if you look at the road games, Washington State, Arizona, Colorado, California, and then Oregon State at the end of the year.
It's not a brutal schedule by any means.
No, especially because you're missing USC in the Pac-12, and then your big out-of-conferences. You're playing a tough out-of-conference schedule with BYU and Georgia. But BYU at home, I think, is winnable, and I think it's not crazy to think this team goes 11-1 with the schedule, just losing to Georgia. Now, would I give them that? No, I think 10-2 is probably safer, but Vegas has the odds at 8.5. Now, I don't think there's three teams that Oregon's losing on the schedule again. I mean, I think you're getting better in a lot of different positions. I think the front seven remains the same. I think you're going to take a big step at quarterback. And then wide receivers is kind of a question mark, but there's a lot of talent on this team. Dill, anything else to say before we close it out?
No, I like kind of what you said. To not have to play USC, who it looks like they're going to be a very different USC team than we've seen in the past, I think is really nice. And as difficult of a game as Georgia is, it's like BYU I think is good, but when Oregon's good, they're way better than BYU. So I think, again, I like Dan Lanning. I feel like, again, this team never seemed to play to its potential under Mario Cristobal because they were wildly talented, but never really took the next step.
The player development was never really that there with Oregon.
And you got to think Dan Lanning's going to develop players because he did that with the Georgia defense where they just – I mean, every year they were turning over guys and just playing really good football year after year.
Yeah, I'm optimistic about what Dan Lanning can do in Oregon, especially I think he's the right man for the job if they were to move to the Big Ten.
It looks like everyone will be moving soon. So.
Yeah. All right, to close out the show, guys, because you guys have been so awesome checking out our videos, we do have a sponsorship for the show. Support for ROC Boys Football is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's Performance Package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code ROCBOYS. That is ROCBOYS at manscaped.com. If my math is correct, guys, that is 8 million balls that have been taken care of. Guys, it is a game changer. It's going into summer. Become a demon this summer with Manscaped. Boost your confidence. Again, 20% off at Rock using code ROCBOYS at manscaped.com. Dill, I'm an absolute weapon for the summer. You got to trust it. We appreciate you guys checking us out. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.